Hey you guys, welcome to Alex and Andy live, coming to you live from Shanghai, China, where it's currently 7:31 p.m. on May 11th, Thursday, or Wednesday, sorry, May 11th, where Shanghai is still currently under lockdown based on the coronavirus situation, although the situation is looking up, obviously, which we'll discuss. So coming up on today's show, we have the latest numbers, obviously quite a big fall. 228 symptomatic and 1,259 asymptomatic cases, with zero community infections, which is an overall drop of over 50% actually, which is great news. Half of Shanghai has hit zero community transmission. That's 8 of the city's 16 districts that have hit the goal of zero community COVID transmission. So I think we're well on the way. The second downtown district has gone zero. Now, we mentioned before that Putuo district had achieved a zero community transmission. Now, Shuhui district has joined in there, reaching basically zero community transmission, becoming, again, the second downtown district after Putuo to achieve that primary goal, which is awesome news. Now, in world news, also related to the COVID situation here in Shanghai and China, the World Health Organization said in a media conference that China's COVID zero policy is unsustainable. Now, that's at the same time that a new report has come out arguing that dropping China's zero COVID policy without adequate safeguards risks 1.5 million lives. So the head of the World Health Organization said on Tuesday that China's COVID zero tolerance policy is not sustainable given what is known now about the disease. In rare public comments by the UN agency on a government's handling of the virus, he said, the Director General said, "We don't think that it's sustainable considering the behavior of the virus." But China hit back today against what it called irresponsible comments by the head of the WHO. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said, "We hope the relevant individual can view Chinese COVID policy objectively and rationally and know the facts instead of making irresponsible remarks." Probably predictable comments there from China. But anyway, enough of the news for now. Let's check in with my co-host, Alex. Alex, are you there?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear. How's it going?
Well, it's okay. Another, as everyone can see, another bit of an overcast, dreary day today, right. But that's fine. So as I mentioned yesterday, we did our final PCR test after having a case in my building recently, last week. We meant to change from red to orange today and be allowed to go downstairs, but another banana peel. No, they started a Jingmo thing here, which is what the silence period that we were talking about yesterday. So I'm not sure, as far as we understand it here, that means that there are no deliveries or anything like that. There's gonna and fortunately we're prepared on food, drink, and everything else for the moment, and so that means that no delivery for 3 days shouldn't affect us too much, if that's actually the case. Although in our building they haven't specified that as of yet, but as far as from what we understand here on the show, that means that there probably won't be any deliveries to my compound. So yeah, I was just set to at least be able to go downstairs or at least enter the orange area, but another bump in the road. Yep.
No, but I think it's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned that you guys are going into a Jingmo, a silent period of deliveries, because as far as I can make out, because we haven't had official word from the Shanghai government on this so-called silent period, right. As far as I can make out, it only applies to districts that are locked down in the red like yours was. So maybe that's a sign that is actually the case. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I guess so. Again, we were of course meant to be turned from red to orange today, but I think that I don't know if they've imposed the Jingmo, the silent period. I don't know why they call it silent. We'll just call it a no contact period, right? I think that's sort of what it means. And so I don't know if they're doing that because we were meant to turn orange and just extending it on through for 3 days, or whether that's just a coincidence, or I'm not really sure. I will find out more because in my building there is someone who is part of our Juehui who lives in my building, and so that person is sort of like the point person between everyone in our building in the group and then to the Juehui, and so that person kind of relays messages from our building to the Juehui. And so I guess I will in the group ask that person what exactly the Jingmo thing means and see if that comports with our understanding of it.
Yeah, and I do have something to add to that actually, because a lot of people were saying that if your Xiaoqiu is in the Jingmo, the silent period, they're also not issuing passes for anyone to get out to see doctors or to do any other. Obviously, if you have an urgent issue, you can. But I found out today that a friend who is not in a lockdown area was allowed out today, and I'll play some footage. He sent me some video of biking through Changning at the Jing'an district, which is really beautiful. So he was able to get a pass to head out of his Xiaoqiu today to head to the doctor for a minor issue, very minor issue, not a major thing at all. Obviously, he's biking to see the doctor. And interestingly, he wasn't given a time limit either. I've heard accounts from people that if you're given a pass, it just lasts for 3 hours. He was able to go out all day. And what he actually did was he made the most of it, stayed out all day, which probably we'd all do, biked around, took some videos to send in for us to play on the show. And he also bought some fresh seafood, which was pretty awesome. So yeah, I think
that looks like Changning district. I don't know, Andy, how you feel about this, but each district sort of in some ways, and it's quite hard to describe. Maybe it's sort of the style of the buildings or the trees, or but each district
can tell.
Just does have a kind of a little bit of a different feel to it. You know, when I see a lot of plain houses and sort of the way the trees are, it does feel very Changning to me, which is just the district on the west part of downtown. And yeah, it does. That's what it looks like to me. So yeah, it's good that I haven't seen it in a long time. So yeah.
Yeah, he was pretty happy to get out today, actually. And he did have one regret though, and that is he wishes he brought his dog with him, because his dog, I'm sure, would have loved to have gone out. Yeah. But obviously, unsure if he can bring the dog to see the doctor. But anyway, he got the medicine he needed, got some fresh seafood, biked around for a little while, and headed home. So yeah, that is what Changning district looks like. He also biked around Jing'an. So yeah, 我羡慕他, quite jealous.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to do that. Like I was saying yesterday, I know even if I'm allowed to go downstairs and walk around, you know, I'm sort of I'm sort of how could I say this? Waiting until we can actually do stuff like this, or you know, go to not necessarily a restaurant just yet, but someplace for some form of entertainment, and not just straight to the hospital and back, or straight to the supermarket and back home in an hour. Like that's not really exciting for me. So. No, I'm not gonna. I'm afraid of catching COVID and having to leave my house because of that, and so I'm gonna be extra cautious about it until something gives, and at least until I can, you know, go do more than just walk down an empty street in 5 minutes. So we'll see. We do have good news as far as the numbers go today. I know, Andy, you sent me this earlier today, right when it came out, and I read the story earlier, and it seems really promising, at least in terms of the statistics for today.
Yeah, for sure. Well, actually, what we can do is bring in our colleague Yang Jian, who can talk to us about the official view of what's happening. Yang Jian, how's it going?
Hi, good.
Hey, so today we saw a sharp, I think it's fair to call it a sharp drop in cases, by your calculations, over 50%. Is there any word officially on what we may be able to attribute that kind of a drop to?
Yes, the Deputy Director of the city's Center for Disease Control said the recent efforts on the old residential communities and the urban villages have paid off, which is one of the main reasons behind today's sharp decrease of the daily infection number. Because yesterday the city official just said over 90% of the new infections recently were found at these older communities, lane-style neighborhoods, and the urban villages in the city's urban-rural connecting areas. And the CDC staff have launched a so-called point removal campaign on these sites as one of the 10 actions of the cities to put the resurgence under control soon. And he said the staff have launched several special activities, such as to knock the door of every inhabitant to make sure everyone take the PCR test. And after that, they've made customized prevention and control measures for each of the key communities and villages. And about the current situation, the CDC official said, first, the city's daily infection number keeps falling. And second, the pandemic is tending to a good prospect more steadily. And thirdly, the risk of community transmission and the spread of the COVID has been effectively contained. And however, he also noted the risk of resurgence still exists, considering the characteristics of the Omicron variant. And the CDC officials said again today that the dominant subvariant of the city remains the Omicron BA2 and the BA2.2, according to the gene sequence of locally transmitted infections since March the 1st. Andy.
Yeah, good. It's good to see those numbers down. And then not only that, but half of Shanghai's 16 districts, so 8 of them, have now basically achieved the zero COVID community transmission. So what can people in those 8 districts do? And do you think this trend will continue?
Yes, we now have 2 downtown and 6 outlying districts, along with 5 towns in Pudong that have basically reached the target. And 2 districts, Jingshan and Fengshan, actually reported 0 infection yesterday. And now over 70% of the Shanghai citizens are in the precautionary areas. About what citizens can do in this district, we've mentioned the city has made different rules for the downtown and the suburb districts that have basically achieved the 0 community transmission goal. In the outskirts districts, people in the precautionary areas are allowed to move around within the districts. They can go to supermarkets, drugstores, and hospitals. But residents in the downtown precautionary areas are only allowed to move within their sub-districts or towns and go to designated supermarkets and drugstores. And however, the district governments can step up or lower down these measures according to their pandemic situation. For instance, the Yangpu district government announced today that if there are many locked down areas around the precautionary areas, then the district will upgrade the measures to the same as controlled areas. So residents in some downtown precautionary areas might still be required to stay within their neighborhood compounds. And control measures can also be downgraded, like in Putuo, which is the first downtown district that achieved the 0 transmission goal. Its deputy director said today that the size of its locked down areas have been reduced to the unit of a single residential building. So only the building with the positive case will be put under lockdown, and the other buildings in the same neighborhood will become controlled areas, which means the residents can still pick up deliveries in the residential compound. And the Putuo officials said from last week, residents in the precautionary areas in Putuo are allowed to work outside the neighborhoods in staggered period to shop at nearby supermarkets, malls, or the pharmacies. And the official said they are also taking measures to consolidate the achievement. One is to quickly find the source of infection whenever a new case was detected. And the second is to promote the vaccination services across its precautionary areas, especially among the seniors and the children. So the trend of the pandemic looks quite positive with fewer daily infections and more precautionary areas and more freedoms for the citizens there. But risk of resurgence still exists. Alex.
Awesome, Yang Jian. Looks like some really good news there. Hopefully, when we see you this time tomorrow, you'll have some even better news for us. See you then.
See you
Tomorrow.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Well, that is awesome. Awesome news. 50% down across the whole city. And also, as you mentioned, 8 districts have entered 0 community transmission. It was interesting that he noted, though, that downtown districts, once they reach 0, will face slightly higher restrictions. They will only be allowed to move around their sub-district or towns, which is different to districts, obviously, that are further out.
Yeah, the downtown area, obviously, this goes without saying, but the downtown area is more densely populated, obviously, than the sort of surrounding areas. Shanghai, the municipality of Shanghai is fairly large and includes several downtown districts, as you've seen on the map before. Should we look down a little bit? Do we have the map down there? There it is. So obviously the downtown area on the left side is highlighted in green and then magnified on the right side. And so you can see the downtown districts include Yangpu, Hongkou, Jing'an, Putuo, Fangpu, Shuhui, and Changning districts. which is where Andy and I are both located in the downtown area, as is our Shanghai Daily headquarters. And, obviously the cities, most of the city's skyscrapers and everything, or they're right across the river there in the Pudong area. But what we would call the sort of, I don't know if I'd call them suburban, or, some of them are actually, when you get out there, is actually quite rural. Jinshan, Fengshan, Qingpu, and Jiading and Chongming, I would say, are your more suburban or rural districts. And obviously the population density isn't as high, and so they're being a little bit more relaxed in terms of once the cases get down to community zero with those people's movements.
Yeah, I think it's important to keep in mind, like you said, obviously the population density is much less. Honestly, when you get to these areas, Jiading, Qingpu, Jinshan, it really is like heading out of Shanghai. It's quite far away. This may not look very far, but if you drive, some places you can drive 50 kilometers and still be inside Shanghai. So
before the lockdown, Andy, before the lockdown, I had a good friend of mine, Shanghainese local guy. He had a birthday party, but he decided to do his birthday like a little bit of an adventure, and it was on the very western end of Chongming Island. So basically, what we had to do is we had to go from Pudong, cross a bridge into Chongming Island, and then drive the entire length of Chongming Island to get. It took like 2.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, to get there. So, and it was really out there. So there are parts of Shanghai that are technically part of Shanghai municipality, but are really not the same as the city center itself.
Yeah, they're very different. And actually, if you're not from Shanghai, maybe you don't realize, but in the current COVID situation, and even before this lockdown, probably for, I would say, half a year, people were facing quite strict restrictions on leaving Shanghai. It was quite annoying to leave. So for the last few times when I've gone away with friends, normally we might go visit not a district, a province nearby. But what we've done is instead hire a car and drive as far away as we can while staying inside Shanghai. Yeah. So you can actually go away and feel like you've left Shanghai just by visiting other places in the city. So huge area. But yeah, as you said, this central city area where we live are obviously facing more restrictions coming up. I just want to look at that, the numbers here. This is the 0 and 0 we were hoping for, Alex. New infections from outside quarantine and lockdown areas. 0 and 0 for the first time in a while, since around the end of April, as I can see here.
Right. We had a couple of days where it dropped pretty sharply to 0 at the end of April. I'm not really sure what the reason for that is. Maybe it's just luck. But then we did jump back up, not too high, fewer than 100. It hasn't the community infections, which means people that are found to have tested positive who are outside of either a quarantine facility or a lockdown community. Jumped back up, never got back over 100 after it dropped to 0, but it's good to see that we're back down at the nice round number that we are hoping for.
Yeah, let's hope to aim for 0 from now on, here on out. Let's cross our fingers, touch wood, whatever it is. Here are those numbers in another graph with all the new cases. So we have confirmed cases, which basically just means symptomatic cases, and asymptomatic cases here. So that has, as you can see here, if I zoom in, it has also very sharply dropped. So as you see here, the numbers were falling, and then here it kind of started to level out, which wasn't a good look, obviously. And then over the past 2 days, it has fallen sharply and then sharper again. So this was a fall of about a quarter, and then yesterday's fall was about half. So I'll be keen to see tomorrow morning what we're looking like in terms of numbers then.
Yeah, well, we were at right around, I believe, if I remember correctly, we were at right around 3,000 yesterday. And here it looks like we're right around, let me see here. Yeah, just under 1,500. So it looks like we fell by a little bit more than 50%, which is good. Let's keep doing that.
Yeah, as Pepper says, fantastic to see the decrease in cases. Our efforts are paying off for sure. I think you could start to feel like, Alex won't agree because he doesn't like to get too positive, get too optimistic, but I think we could say that probably or hopefully we are near the end, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Cross my fingers again.
I think it's not that I don't like to be optimistic. It's just that I don't like to make specific predictions. I'm trying to stay optimistic throughout this entire thing, but I'm trying not to make specific predictions on when will it be over or when will we this or when will we that, because then if that doesn't end up coming to pass, you'll just feel disappointed. And so, I'm optimistic, but I just don't
Sorry,
want to make.
that is what I mean. You don't want to let yourself down.
I know.
Oh, for sure. I understand, Alex. Don't worry. I got you wrong.
All right.
Hey,
let's check out that.
Let's check out that lovely view of Lu Jiazui before we head to some other news. We don't have any other videos to play today, but what I do want to do is go through some other of the important stories today with you, Alex, really quickly. Obviously, we've already talked quite a bit about this. Half of Shanghai's districts have already achieved COVID zero. I don't think we need to go into that too much more.
Yeah.
Good
again,
news.
I do want to say one thing about it, though. Again, all of these things are not blanketly. They're not necessarily uniformly applied, as we know. A lot of neighborhood committees are treating it in different ways, right? I mean, we know.
Right.
I'm sure several of our viewers have been green now for some time, but still face restrictions in terms of going out into the streets where they can go and things like that. And there will be other viewers who have a little bit more freedom as far as that goes, even though there may not be any technical or material difference in these two situations. That's just because, as we've said from the beginning of this back in March, a lot of the decision making on the street level, so to speak, is being made by these neighborhood committees. And
Right.
sometimes, to protect themselves, maybe, or their residents or whomever, they are adding. They're treating it with more strictly than the regulations necessarily dictate. And so, So when we talk about these districts or these areas, you're allowed to go out. Maybe it's possible that you're not, even if you're in one of those areas. Yeah, it's possible. So we're not saying that you're definitely allowed out if you're in one of those areas, because your neighborhood committee might be saying something different.
Yeah, and that's why I want to bring up the news we heard before that people may be required to go into lockdown if there are cases in their buildings, and how that has proven the government's come out and said that's not the case. So I don't know. I can't remember what my point was there. Sorry. Anyway, I had a point that's gone, so forget about it. There's news here that the city has deployed more medics. Now, we've seen video recently of out-of-town medics who have come to Shanghai to help out, leaving, and a lot of people were like, hey, that's really cool. That's a good sign. But actually, there's news now today that the city is deploying more medics to treat severe COVID-19 cases. And now, obviously, that doesn't mean an uptick in severe cases, but it obviously goes to show that we're still, it's still a crucial stage, and there's still people that need a lot of help.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I mean, we know that people that are either elderly or otherwise immunocompromised are the people who are particularly vulnerable, just as they would be vulnerable to any other viral infection, right? We know that people who are immunocompromised, who are elderly, who have other medical conditions, and so on, etc., are the people who are most vulnerable, as we have seen in the statistics with the unfortunate fatalities that we have witnessed here in Shanghai. Pretty much everyone has been either elderly, immunocompromised, or with some sort of other underlying medical condition. And so those are the people that are being protected here.
Yeah, definitely a very vulnerable group. And hopefully that group will be aiming to up vaccinations shortly, which would be very helpful, not just for them, but for all of us in total.
Right.
Hey, there was another big story. Actually, this report, Alex, I don't know if you've seen this story. I haven't read the report, but it was made in from Fudan University, my university, which basically argues that if China drops the COVID zero policy without any safeguards, this is important. Without any safeguards, they've added that kind of qualifier. We risk losing 1.5 million people. Now, that's why the reason I point this out is because they're not saying necessarily that dropping zero COVID will be a bad thing, but we need to keep some safeguard. I think you've got to look deep into the words there. So,
sometimes
obviously China's not going to drop safeguards.
Yeah, I think with a lot of stories, you sometimes have to look into the verbiage to figure out, what they're actually talking about, right? I mean, sometimes, obviously. Anyway, I'm not sure how this is calculated. I haven't read the study myself either. So I'm not going to speculate on that. I'm not sure how it's calculated, and I'm not obviously an expert or a scientist. So, but yeah, I do notice the part where it says without any safeguards. And so regardless of whatever direction they choose to take this in the coming months and even coming years, I think it's really important and crucial that that we look at those safeguards, such as, and I'll read directly from here, ramping up vaccination and access to treatments, right? And I think that's really important, regardless of the direction that we end up going in the future.
Yeah, I think, very true, because obviously China could choose, if it wanted to, and sometime in the future, and it probably will, to drop its zero COVID policy. But obviously, like you said, it's not going to do so without any safeguards. So I think it is still very possible to basically, in the eyes of people overseas, drop the current zero COVID policy and still not lose 1.5 million people, because obviously we would still have significant safeguards in place, like you said, vaccination and so on. So I think, I'm going to read the report later. Unfortunately, I haven't read it yet, but as I said before, this was published in Nature magazine. I didn't mention that. It was done by Fudan, but it was published in Nature Medicine. And it was also in, in association or backed up by researchers at the US National Institute of Health. So I think it's definitely worth reading and definitely worth looking into. But obviously, we wouldn't drop any policies without safeguards in place. And I don't think anyone in the world has. For example, New Zealand has dropped its strict COVID zero policy, but it still has strict safeguards in place. So it's all in the verbiage.
Yeah. Definitely. That's true. I know. I know in the US it was initially handled poorly, but things are looking pretty good as far as that goes now, with people receiving vaccines at a high rate and everything like that.
Right.
And people just generally more aware of what's going on than they were at the start, right? I think, I think that what China's done through 2020 and 2021 was extremely effective, and more effective than really anything in any other country I can think of. But we'll see how it's going now. Obviously, we're running into some issues here lately over the last couple of months, and we'll see how it goes in the future. But again, just to repeat the important part of it, which is that the safeguards are really important. To make sure that whatever happens, that the most vulnerable members of the city and the country's population are protected, and so they definitely need to make sure they're vaccinated and things like that.
Yes, for sure. Hey, Alex, we have a comment here which is directed at you. Oh, I've lost it because they're moving so fast. But anyway, Travel with Jean said, sorry, you guys. Here we go. Alex, things are out of lockdown here. He's talking about Zhengzhou. Hope that gives you a good feeling.
Yeah, cool, good. I'm glad to hear that. Enjoy yourself. All right, that's cool. Yes.
So good news. I think they locked down when they had about 60 or so cases. So very early, very hard, which is obviously not what happened here in Shanghai. I think we were trying for a different path, which arguably didn't work. It's great to see that Zhengzhou, the capital of Hunan province, is out of lockdown. Some more comments. Actually, I'll read a comment on the Shine WeChat group. Robbie says, Shanghai 加油, save the elderly and immunocompromised. That is definitely, obviously, what this is all hinging on. So as I said before, I really hope that we can get the vaccination rate up, especially amongst the elderly here in Shanghai and in China in general, which are, like everywhere else, among the most vulnerable.
Right.
Let's see what
happens. Age of the population in Shanghai is higher than it is throughout the rest of the country. But China in general, as a country, has a fairly it's well documented fact that China has an aging population, and the average age here is much higher than it was in the past. And so, as China has become a developed country in many metrics, it's joined the other countries in that developed country, however you want to define that. But it's joined the other countries, in the same, like the United States, like Canada, like Japan, South Korea, other countries like that, in terms of having a fairly high, a lot of European countries and other countries around the world, as having a pretty high average age and a longer lifespan of its residents, right? Which is great, but then it also leads to a situation where you've got a lot of people who are at risk for something like this.
Exactly. So I think, if you can get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you have elderly people in your family who are reluctant to get vaccinated, don't pressure them, but do try to help them understand. I think a lot of people are fearful. Maybe you can make them feel better. I don't know. Anyway, you guys, that is basically all we have time for today. What I'm going to do right now quickly, though, is just quickly sum up again. Sum up the news from today. So the latest numbers, Shanghai had 228 asymptomatic, and 1,259 asymptomatic cases. We saw cases drop over 50%, which is awesome. half of Shanghai's 16 districts have reached community COVID zero transmission, which is awesome to see. And that includes the second downtown district, which is Shuhui district, which has basically reached that milestone together with Alex's district. My district, not sure. I asked Yang Jian before. He said maybe it's coming up.
Yeah, well,
and
real quick, Shuhui was also one of the very hardest hit districts at the start of this outbreak in Shanghai. In fact, Shuhui and many, but it was sort of the epicenter of where this sort of thing, where this thing kind of started out. And so it's good to see that they are doing better than they were, because I know that the people of Shuhui were among the most, they had to deal with among the most strict of lockdowns during when this was really raging. So that's cool.
So they've been through it. Hey, and the last piece of news, big news today, was that the World Health Organization said that they think COVID zero is unsustainable. And that comes as a new report comes out arguing that dropping the policy without safeguards could risk 1.5 million lives. So yeah, basically that is it. Alex, do you have anything else you want to add today?
Not yet. Just waiting to see about the period of silence and what that's going to mean, and hopefully that only lasts 3 days. And just sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. Of course, not just with my district. It's not all about me and everybody else, but I can only pay attention. Otherwise, I'll have compassion fatigue, as we discussed yesterday. So I'm just trying to, you know what I mean? So I'm just trying to focus on what's in front of me, and let's see, let's hope for another steep decline in the number of positives tomorrow, like we saw today.
Yeah, let's cross our fingers. Hopefully by the time we see you all tomorrow, same time, same place, at 7:30 p.m. Beijing time, Shanghai time, we'll have some more awesome news for you. Until then, we'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.
All right.